Hello? Yeah? All right. Hey, everybody. We're going to get started here again. I'm Chris from Melbourne, Australia chapter. I'm the only guy from Australia here at the moment. We've got a chapter in Sydney, but... oh, no. Who we got here? Oh, man. All right. I know we've got Australians here. Good to see these guys. Yeah, we've got a chapter in Sydney too, but he just got a job, Director of Operations for Uber, so he thinks he's too cool for school at the moment. And he didn't even come, but yeah, if you just look out in the lobby, you see, you know, the good things that we're doing here. I mean, we've got Atlassian out there, and we've got 99 Designs, so we're trying to compete with you guys a little bit. And but that's enough about me. We've got two of the biggest and the best. We've got my founder here. I'm not going to give him much of an intro, but I love the man, and I'm very proud to be part of this organization. But we do have David Cohen from TechStars. Yep, big name. And if you don't know who TechStars is, then you probably shouldn't be in the room. But David's had many companies, Pinpoint Technologies, sold that, probably made a fortune. Earfeeder, right? Sold that. He's a very wealthy guy. But he's very active in the community. I think he made over 100 investments. Angel investments, more, 200, 250, more than that. So you can harass him if you've got a startup later on. It's okay. All right, so, you know, Startup Grind, we do this welcome here, so I need everyone on their feet, and I want to welcome Derek Andersen and David Cohen to stage. Come on. All right. You good?
Welcome to Startup Grind.
Thanks for having me. This is awesome.
Well, we're excited to have you. Tell us, talk about a range of things. Just tell us what TechStars is, if you would.
Sure. Yeah. So TechStars really is a mentorship-driven accelerator model. So it's about getting a whole community behind just 10 or so startups at once. We do that once a year in about a dozen places, mostly in the U.S. And we've now funded about 350 companies, and you know, got some amazing companies in the portfolio. It's just a blast to be around these energetic entrepreneurs, around a whole community of mentors, and you know, it's an amazing thing to have a whole city behind a group of 10 companies.
Yeah.
And we've replicated that and seen that.
And does that happen in? I mean, Boulder we're going to talk about, but does that happen in the other 6 cities? Does everyone? Is it implicit that the community around you gets involved, or you won't do it there?
Well, so when we started, you know, I'm from Boulder, which is, for those of you who don't know Boulder, it's 100,000 people. It's near Denver. It's a small hippie town. You might have read that you can smoke pot there now, so that's kind of cool. It attracts a lot of people. Football team doesn't always win, but you know, it's good otherwise. You know, we didn't know if the sort of give first nature of Boulder would translate to places like New York City,
yeah,
you know, or Boston, and have been actually blown away that it translates in an even more powerful way. A lot of these places had never experienced a mechanism that really created a focal point for early stage activity in their community. They just had all these disparate, you know, activities and events, which are great. I mean, it's awesome to, you know, go to an event and get an award and be able to present your startup or whatever. But yeah, when you have like the whole town focused on you, something magic really happens.
Yeah. How did it start? Where did it come from? You know, tell us about some of the first meetings you had about it. And
sure. So there's this guy named Brad Feld.
We've heard of him.
Yeah,
he was on the. He wasn't here last year, but it was like 1984. He was Skyped in from Miami.
That's weird.
Last year was weird. Yeah.
He does that. He decided that for like a full year he wasn't going to travel.
Okay.
So that's probably why he did that.
Yeah.
He can do that because he's an amazing investor, and people are like, whatever, do it by Skype. But I'd never met Brad. I was an angel investor. I'd done a few of my own startups that kind of went 2 and 1 and started angel investing and kind of thought it sucked, and came up with this idea for, like, you know, surrounding the community around these companies and giving them a little capital and spending time with them. And I pitched it to Brad in what I think was a 10-minute meeting. It took me 3 months to get on his calendar. And you know, Brad sort of embodied that idea that, yeah, we'll meet with anybody, right?
Yeah.
I mean, crazy things can happen. So in walked the crazy thing. I told him about this idea for TechStars and that I was putting up, you know, a little bit of money, and I wanted him to invest and get involved. And in the 10-minute meeting, he said, you know, I'm in. I'm investing.
Wow.
as long as you're not, you don't prove to be an idiot. So we had to do some stuff with you to make sure that.
And had anyone else invested, or was he kind of that initial person?
He was the second guy, and then
wow.
My co-founder from a couple of businesses, David Brown and Jared Polis, who is a fantastic entrepreneur there. It was just the four of us, sort of as an experiment that first year. We ran the whole thing on $200 grand that first year.
Wow.
Just really light, and it, magic happened, and ever since it's just been building.
What are you? What are you most proud of? About TechStars? What piece of it, are you most?
So, obviously the companies. I mean, the companies that have come out of it and the sort of triumphs that they have. There's this moment, we make all these videos, and there's this one moment when I remember seeing myself watching, I think it was just a practice for a demo day or something, and the alumni who had been through the program were coming back to coach the companies that were about to present their businesses for the first time. And that sort of sustained culture of giving first and of mentorship really made me proud in that moment to just see how, if you now go through TechStars, there's companies that are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 years ahead of you. And they all come back. And they all say, here's what you're about to go through, and here's what you might experience. And that network and the build of it is really exciting.
It's really cool. Talk about your community values. Talk about what makes the TechStars community special.
So, we operate in all these different places, but kind of have the same, general mantras. I mean, one that you know about is give first, right? It's the idea that you give before you get. And so, like Brad in that first meeting, with me, just take a meeting and be open to ideas. Help an entrepreneur because it's the right thing to do. One of the things we spun out early because of that value is something called the Global Accelerator Network. So in 2011, the White House launched something called Startup America. Some of you might remember. We just gave away our model, and we said, if you want to use the TechStars model, we documented the heck out of it, right? And said, just go ahead and do it.
Open source.
Yeah, and people say, why would you do that? You're creating competitors. And that always produces unexpected results when you give first. It's a secret weapon of the best entrepreneurial communities. And in this case, what happened was two of those organizations, London and Chicago, we actually acquired into the TechStars system after they showed us that they were great. So that's one of the big values. I think the sort of open door attitude, right? Anybody will take a meeting, anybody will try to help you. I think these are secret weapons of the best communities.
And if I could just share an experience, the first time I met you, coincidentally, was at a launch conference. Jason's backstage coming in here in a minute. And I emailed you and said, hey, we want to do StartGrind in Denver, Boulder. And you don't know me. I mean, I'm not anybody. But you immediately just connected me to the founder of SendGrid. It's this amazing company that's raised tens of millions of dollars, and kind of said, hey, we'll have this give first. Brad Feld, the first time I ever had an interaction with him was 4 years ago at office hours, where I scheduled 15 minutes, random person, where he spent time with me. Yeah. It's very genuine, and I think you guys are kind of, in some ways, a little, you're workers. You just kind of put your shoulder down and work and live it, and I think, I don't know how many people know about it. This is why part of why we're excited to have you, so people can learn more about it.
Yeah, well, I think that the Bay Area, the Valley, is good at that. I mean, that sort of idea that, it's a community, and you have to sort of help each other. It's gotten so big that it sort of gets lost, but I think that's the roots of it. And in a place like Boulder, we really sort of live that every day. And I think you get so much opportunity from just being responsive and serendipity and things that randomly happen to you, that if you're not open to it, you're screwed, right? So, I'm amazed that people don't answer their email. I don't think it's amazing that we do. I think it's amazing that people don't. By the way, I'm David at TechStars.com.
Can we just clap for that real quick? Because I think that's a good insight.
There's like gold in there, right? Like, I mean, and anybody that has anything that I can help them with, just email me, David at TechStars.com. It's not that much.
Like literally, are people mailing you Bitcoins, or what do you mean by gold?
Well, I got my whole mining operation going on back here. I hope so. That would be nice.
Yeah, that would be nice. How to get a meeting with David Cohen. Send him 1 Bitcoin. Where do your founders fall into? You've got like YC, it's like Ivy League. I know Jessica wouldn't like me saying this, she's going to be here later, but it's really an Ivy League focused entrepreneur hacker. And you've got Dave McClure, who's here this morning, who is really like the ultimate hustler. And I wonder, like, do your entrepreneurs, do they fall somewhere in between there? Do you, like, who are these people, most of them? Are they engineers? Are they?
Yeah, I think our belief around TechStars, and it's played out in almost every company I've been around that's been successful. You know, the one thing I've learned is there's no hard and fast rule, but we look for tech-heavy teams. We actually like the balance. So, you know, 2 engineers, 1 person focused on the business seems to be a magical combination. Could be, you know, 2 engineers, because it's these days pretty easy to go out and find an experienced business person who joins a really interesting company. You know, but like everywhere, we're seeing that, you know, the investors are the developers, right? I mean, they're the ones that are deciding which companies are going to get created and funded by where they put their energy.
Yeah.
And so, you know, they're in control right now. I think in 10 years, it'll be the designers, by the way, as we get more automated with, you know, developing technology. But I think design is going to be super valued the way that engineering is today in 10 years. But, you know, tech heavy, but with some balance is the formula that I've seen work the best.
Which companies within the TechStars program do you guys point to as your kind of temple, you know, hero companies? Who do your companies look up to?
I mean, there's so many. You know, I think we have like 30,
who are your favorite children?
We have like 35 companies that are 25 million and above in value, right? So
how many did you say? 35?
35, and I think we've now had 30 acquisitions. I'd say 20 of them have been sort of meaningful, and then some acquihires, of course. But you know, I mean, you mentioned SendGrid, obviously. You know, they're sort of the gold standard, I think, today in the transactional email space.
Yeah.
Very fast-growing company. You've got companies like Robotics that make the sort of gaming platforms. You know, but there's so many. I mean, just Contently in New York doing content management, growing really fast. Localytics, I just read the other day, raised another 16 million in Boston. So, you know, there are dozens of companies
that. It's a nice post to read.
Yeah, yes, I didn't know about it.
Right.
I just read it.
It's like, oh, cool.
I knew about it.
You did know about it.
Yeah,
okay.
I heard about it. But, you know, I'm also really proud of the ones that, you know, nobody's ever heard of, right? That are making $2-3 million a year and growing. You know, these things take time, and you know, we've had amazing pivots. We had amazing, you know, build in the portfolio, and now with 350 companies, I think, you know, the portfolio is worth a few $1 billion. Yeah. Right. So it's really over time. It's amazing how it builds.
The hashtag is Startup Grind. You've obviously had incredible success. I have been hearing that you all are raising a new fund. You probably can't talk about it, but or you can, maybe, or can you talk about it?
So raise your hand if you're raising a venture fund, because I mean, I'm reading about like literally 20 today, I think I read about. But yes, we're in that group. You know, all I can really point to is the filing that we did.
Yeah.
And so we're in the middle of that, so I'm not supposed to talk too much about it. But there's a lot of opportunity around TechStars, and I think the you know, broader investment community institutions are seeing that opportunity.
Great. And talk to us a little bit about, you guys have a huge focus on mentoring, and I think you have a really good perspective on this. How do you pair your mentors with your startups? We hear some people talk about where it's kind of this, it's almost like a, you know, some sort of long-term relationship where you can't really force certain mentors. How do you all kind of get the right people with the right people?
Yeah, so we're huge believers that you can't force it. It's got to be a mutual falling in love process. And so we create a lot of exposure in the first month. It's not, you know, people think of TechStars and they think of like, it's like school, but it's actually not at all like that. There's no real curriculum and there's no set pattern.
Yeah.
It's for each company. So, you know, if you're in the program and what you need is help with pricing or go-to-market strategy, you know, we're going to surround you with a bunch of people like that. And some are going to stick and some are not. You end up in TechStars having typically 3 to 6 lead mentors who are sort of at another level of commitment with your company. So each company ends up with real focus. That's really what's different about what we do, is that it's not, you know, from on high, you know, you're getting this advice and you have a dinner and people say amazing things. It's that you have this, you know, community of people that are actually in there working with the business, working with you on the business.
Yeah.
Right. And so that expertise is dependent on what you need, and it's got to be, bidirectional. It's got to be that you fell in love in both ways.
What makes for a great mentor? Who is it? What are the characteristics of someone?
So I wrote a post called Mentor Manifesto about this, and I think really the biggest thing is that it's an approach of asking questions, right? I mean, many of us have had mentors in our lives that have said, this is how you do this. This is the one and only right way.
Yeah.
And that's a huge red flag to me, and we monitor for it closely. What you're looking for is challenge and the right questions and a sort of Socratic approach.
Yeah.
And so the best mentors do that, and they don't have to be right. The reason people say, well, why do people mentor around TechStars? What do they get out of it? Are they getting some equity or something? No, they're giving first, but what they get out of it is they learn. And so, recognize that that's where they're coming from, and when they're giving you advice, they may or may not be giving you good advice, but based on what you then do with it, and the closing the loop and coming back to them, they'll learn from that, and their own businesses will get better, and their pattern matching will get better.
How have you gotten such amazing people on there? You've got Fred Wilson, you've got Dick Costello, you've got, obviously, you talked about Redfield, Jeff Clavier was here yesterday. And in the context of entrepreneurs looking for their own mentors, trying to build their own mentor network for their career, where do you start? How do you get people that are going to give you the right advice you need? How do you get them on board?
Yeah, so take them separately. I mean, the original build of the network of mentors was really just people that we knew, that we had worked with, that had that give first kind of attitude. That Jeff that you mentioned, Jeff doesn't invest everywhere, but he likes to invest in Boulder and New York and here, right? And so it was an obvious match, for Jeff to come. He's been coming since 2007.
Wow.
And he just at first came not looking for investments, but just trying to be helpful to build a new community.
Yeah.
Right. And that is one of the nice things about what we do is, if you're someone like Jeff, you get to come and plug in to that New York or that Boulder community in a very effective way and create new social relationships when you come and mentor. So that's part of what the attraction has been. I think also just having good companies, that always helps. The second question, people say to me all the time, I can't get anyone to, be my mentor, or, I can't get help from people. And I think you're probably just doing it wrong, because there's so many people that are willing to help, and the challenge is everybody goes after Fred Wilson.
Sure.
And everybody goes after Brad, and there's just physically not enough time. My advice is always look for somebody that you admire that's built a company in your space or an adjacent space, and just, think of it as a long-term relationship, right? You don't have to go right for that lunch meeting, right? You can go for a quick email exchange, love a piece of feedback on my product, and sort of build a relationship that way. So keep the first interactions really light and easy. And as you build interest with people, then I think you get together and do the meetings and coffees and those things.
Our hashtag is Startup Grind. I don't think, until today, I had never heard this story, and I'd love for you to tell it. You are one of the original investors of Uber, and really played kind of an interesting role at the very earliest stage. I wonder if you could tell that story about how you got to meet their founder. I got to meet Ryan.
Sure. So Ryan Graves was sort of the first guy really running the business, right? I mean, Travis, Garrett weren't active in the business. It's sort of their thing. And Ryan was actually relocating. I can't remember where on the East Coast, but he was driving out here to sort of, after his Twitter exchange with them, to sort of be the original operator of the company. And he ended up in Boulder on his way. And he was attracted to TechStars, right? Like, I heard you're doing this thing, and we had him meet some companies and had a beer, and they only raised $1.5 million in that first round, if I remember correctly. It was a small amount of money, and the pitch to get into that deal, from my perspective, was TechStars, which is not, hey, you have to move here and go through it, but rather, there's an opportunity for you. We have these demo day events. There's 500 to 1,000 investors showing up for all of them. High net worth people, venture capitalists, sort of who's who in the startup community. Let's do some rides around those events, right? And just was lucky enough to be, meeting him at the right moment and excited about what they were doing, and, the rest is history.
What, 2014, what are you all looking at? What is the focus over the next year? What do you want to accomplish, and what are you doing?
So we built this really magical thing that works in a location, right? So we do that. You mentioned the 7 cities we're in, Chicago, New York, Boston, Austin, Texas, Boulder, London, Seattle, right? We have direct operations in those locations. And we've gotten really good at that. They produce great results. A lot of people are interested in it and getting involved in the companies. Very, very high interest. So that's awesome. We have this new thing that we're doing, which is sort of working with big companies. For example, we run a program that's exactly the same for Nike around digital sport. We run a program that's exactly the same for EdTech with Kaplan, financial technology with Barclays, and so on. We have several of those. That's really our growth right now. It's a magical combination because you get all of the normal TechStars stuff, plus you get the help from that big company that's in the space you're in without them having to be an investor in your company or having options in your company. So that's a new thing that we're growing. I think now we're really good at doing, there's 12 of those happening around the country and the world every year, 12 programs. So about 120, 140 or so companies a year. Got real scale on it. What we suck at, and we're trying to get a lot better at, is the interconnectedness of that network. So in London or in Boston or in New York, it's phenomenal, and it's a huge unfair advantage for the companies that are in those programs. But we don't leverage that across, the water to London. The New York folks aren't helping the London folks. So we're really focused on how do we get more leverage across the system. And really, the product of TechStars is not an accelerator, it's the network. Right? That's the thing that people sort of undervalue that can really change your business. And so we're trying to build that linkage across the system.
Well, your community is, and as you describe your values, I mean, it is the differentiator. It's, there are so many accelerators around the world. You've got smart people at the top. There are others that have smart people, but they don't have the community that you have. We're going to take questions in just a second too, so be ready for this. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that I would just mention, I was talking to somebody in the green room about was this global accelerator network, that I mentioned earlier. So there are now, I don't know, I think there's literally an accelerator launching every day. Yeah. And people ask me all the time, like, are they going away yet? The problem is they're not going to go away anytime soon because they're super cheap.
Yeah.
And I actually think it's okay, right? Because the definition of an accelerator and a mentorship-driven accelerator is that people are helping the companies and they're investing. And when you have those two things, I think it's okay. Even if it doesn't work economically, it's additive in a community and it's teaching entrepreneurs and connecting them to the previous generation that can help them. It's putting capital into their ideas. Even if they all fail, the community rises a little bit, right? And so I don't think people should look at that as a bad thing. Not all of them, in fact, most of them will not work economically, but that doesn't mean they're going to die. A lot of people, with plenty of money and a lot of drive to make their communities better will sustain these things for 10 or 20 years or more.
Question here right in the front. Mike, do we have a mic? Go ahead.
Yeah, so do you guys only take startups in a particular... Do you guys take only startups in a particular stage of their company, or is it any stage?
Yeah, so I think that the top accelerator programs have seen a real market shift in that mix. Certainly in 2007 when we started, it was a couple of people and a dog and an idea, maybe.
Like literally you had a dog there?
Yeah, usually they had a dog, yeah. And not always.
It's a lot of companies that started with dogs.
Yeah,
not the, you know what I mean, the animals.
Yeah, the idea is optional, but you're saying the dog.
No, I'm not saying you're a dog, you know what I'm saying.
I got it.
Just,
but that's really changed. So we're very commonly now, if you look at a 10-company class, that we're sort of funding going into TechStars now, 5 or 6 of them will have raised $500,000, $1 million. Several of them will be in multi-millions revenue. It's just so competitive, right? We're at 1% selection rate now. Now, I actually view all of those as basically the same. They're all just pure startups, right? A couple million in revenue, you're trying to build something big it's a head start, but fundamentally you're at the starting line. So we are seeing the mix change. We've had now a dozen companies founded by our own mentors that have gone through the program. So the mix is getting a little older by age of the people we're funding. It's sort of going up, one year per year, somewhere in the mid-30s now is our average age of funded founder. Used to be like 27, 28. And we're seeing more progress, but not afraid at all to work on something that is at the starting line with no progress. So it's a mix today.
Next question, right here. Hustle, Chris, right here.
Here, I got you.
He's got a mic right there. Just stand up and go ahead.
Is Boulder unique, or are there other towns in similar size to Boulder that could develop startup communities like Boulder? And if so, what are the characteristics they need?
Yeah. So one of the things that I'm super passionate about, and I'm a huge believer in, is that there will be 50 great startup communities in our lifetimes for most of us. So, we want to be a part of helping make that happen. Today people say, well, you got to be in one or two places. 10 years ago, they used to say, you can't do a startup in Boulder, Colorado, like on the internet. That's crazy. They'd laugh at you. 100,000 people, where's the support mechanism? Do you guys even have internet there?
Selling all the drugs there, you must have the internet.
You got one university, right? Now when I tell people, you're doing a startup in Boulder, nobody laughs anymore. Oh, right, I've heard of companies from there. I've heard of investors that are there. It's obviously a much smaller community, but it's super vibrant. In fact, we think it's the most entrepreneurial dense city in the world, right? By population of who's working in or on a startup. And that's just amazing to see. It's number 4 in venture capital in America. 10 years ago, it wasn't even in the top 30, right? So things change fast. I do believe there are many places that will rise like that around the world, and I think that's a good thing. This is a special place, and this isn't the aspiration of a place like Boulder to be like this. It's not going to be like this. It's just not. It's different, but it can be the best Boulder it can be. And so the communities that are rising like that are the ones that think about it that way, have this sustained culture of giving back and giving first and mentoring, right? And the pot doesn't hurt. So,
well, I think too. To that, can I just add something to that? Is that you look once you look into these cities, you see that they have their successes, right? Whether it's DC with Rosetta Stone or Capital One, or if you just start looking, then you realize that there are or Millennial Media in Baltimore. There are temp hole unicorns type companies in cities basically everywhere.
I love, sometimes, you come here and you get in a fight, right? Luckily, that's not happening today. But you get in a fight because people say, you got to be here, right? And I just reject that idea. And if you believe that, you're ignoring easily available evidence.
That's right.
To the contrary. Now, there's a ton of interesting stuff here, right? I'm making a living right now investing in everywhere else. I invest here too, right? But I've got a system to help find interesting things in other great places. And, it may not have the volume, those places, but there are places that are rising, like you mentioned. And if you do look, you see the activity.
You said that there would someday be 50 great startup cities. How many do you think there are today?
Well, people...
I'm not going to say, you don't have to say who they are, but, how close are we on that?
Well, so 10 years ago, people would have said, there's Boston and there's...
The Valley.
The Bay Area, right? And... today, depending on your point of view, you could say there's one, right? And so define great, right? I think there are 10 or 12 places in the U.S. that have very vibrant, startup communities that work amazingly well.
Yeah.
And I think it's growing fast, right? So to get to 50, I think we're 10 to 20 years out.
Great. Let's do one more question, and then we'll finish. Get you right there.
So do you still see opportunities for new incubators to be started? And if so, in what kind of area? Is it geographic regions, or do you think that there could be new incubators focusing on helping minorities or women? And if you think that model will be successful helping those types of entrepreneurs?
Yep. Sure. They're still starting up every day, and I think there are still a few places in the world, right, that have a population of some sort that don't have an accelerator. So, those are opportunities. When you talk about the verticalized one, I think that's smart, right? We're doing that. I mentioned like Kaplan and EdTech in New York. It can be a good combination. You've got to make sure it's right for the entrepreneurs, and that's how we think about it. Kaplan could have said, we're going to take a bunch of equity and not give first, and we wouldn't want to do it with them. Instead, they've said, let's just be around the flow. And I think there's corporate opportunities like that. I think verticalization makes a lot of sense because you can get a set of mentors. But when you restrict it to a small geography and a vertical space, it's pretty hard to attract people there. And when you talk about, my personal view on sort of, incubator, accelerator for women or for minorities is I'm not a huge fan of that activity. I would rather celebrate the heroes that, are in the best programs, whatever they are, rather than creating a special context for them. That said, I support a lot of things like that. So, I would rather see it, us all pointing to the women that are amazing, that are, in a Y-Combinator or TechStars or 500 or whatever, rather than creating some other special context for them. And we all have to do better with all of that, obviously.
Let's give Dave a big round of applause. Thanks for being here. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
We've got two special ladies coming up next. Just getting ready here. We've got Colleen Taylor. Good, jeez. I read these bios about 50 times. Colleen Taylor, a reporter that used to work with GigaOM and Newswire and Electronic News, now working with TechCrunch. And our special guest, she's interviewing Alison Pincus, the co-founder of One Kings Lane and Hunter's Alley. She's also worked for NBC, Walt Disney, MBA from UCLA, another one of these overachievers. And I'd like everyone back on their feet for a warm welcome for Colleen Taylor and Alison Pincus. Thank you.
All right, thanks for the warm welcome. So,
wow, this is really big.
I know. It's a good energy.
Yeah.
Good. So, Allie, we only have 20 minutes, so I definitely want to dive right in to One Kings Lane. And I'm sure everyone in this room has heard, big news last week. One Kings Lane raised $112 million in a funding round. This is serious business here. But I want to go back to start. I just want to go back to the early days, because this is startup grind. So there's a lot of people in this room who are in startups right now. And One Kings Lane started like a startup at the very beginning. And at an interesting time, too, because the company started taking form in fall of 2008, at which time, the macroeconomic climate was a mess. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure very few people were thinking of even being able to start a business. Can you take me back to that time? What was the genesis of this idea for One Kings Lane?
Thank you so much. And I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me. So the genesis of One Kings Lane was really, I would have to say, about passion. Susan's my co-founder, we were extremely passionate about this idea that shopping for home decor and furnishings could be rethought and really redone on the internet. And when you sort of think about what had been done, for example, with apparel, it was years and years ahead of what was happening in the home category. So first and foremost, we were A, super passionate, and B, we sort of knew that there was, just as being shoppers, there was a clear opportunity. And to your point about the economy, it was a terrible time to start a business. It was really hard, but on the flip side, when there are really hard periods of economic turmoil, sometimes there are opportunities. So what does that mean? That means certain vendors were able to perhaps be more willing to work with us. Perhaps you were able to have people join your team who may not have been willing beforehand. So there's a flip side.
And what was that idea that you saw as being so unique? Because home decor, like you said, it wasn't online at the time, but there's no shortage of big box brick and mortar home decor sites. What was your vision for what needed to happen?
So yeah, I mean, obviously big brands, big retailers were, of course, 08 was, yes, they were online. But when you think about, a destination that would have hundreds or thousands of brands from across, various verticals, there really wasn't anything like that. And so that was, like the big vision. But first, we also realized, to your point about the economy and what was happening in the world and what was happening domestically with these vendors, there was a lot of excess inventory. And because of that, going forward with the flash sale concept made sense back in 08.
And you guys really pioneered that flash sale concept. You were one of the first ones to do this, right?
Flash sales actually had started off in Europe about, I think, in 07, in the fashion and apparel, in the fashion and accessories market.
Right. And then to bring it to home was unique. And I want to get back to that, but I also want to talk about your co-founder, Susan.
Yes.
A lot of people might not know this, but, so many people, they're advised to become co-founders with people that they've been friends with for a really long time. Famously, Y-Combinator, they say, if you've been friends since you were kids, that's amazing. If you were roommates, that's great. You guys had an opposite story. It was almost like a blind date founder setup. Tell me about how you met Susan.
No, it was a complete blind setup. Lisa Stone, who you guys might know, she's the founder of Blog Her, had met Susan, and Lisa had emailed me and said, would you mind if I introduce you to? And I said no, and she explained to me what Susan was after, and it was amazing. We got connected in September, and then by the end of October, we were shaking hands, saying, we're going to do this. And then we launched, of course, in March of 09.
And so much of it was over email, right? It wasn't that you had met in person. How were you able to identify that this person was somebody that you'd be able to start a business with? Do you have any tips for somebody else who's looking for a co-founder? How did you vet Susan and vice versa?
Well, I think it was mutual vetting.
Right.
Getting into a partnership is getting married. And Susan was living in Los Angeles and I was in San Francisco. And to your point, we actually met. So we kept talking. And because we just kept talking on the phone and emailing, about a week and a half into it, we said, we have to meet. And so then we had our blind date. And I flew to LA and she picked me up and she was like, what do you look like?
It was really one of those things where I'll be wearing red and you'll see me.
Exactly. I mean, we had a real blind date and I went to her house and, it was different because although we had spent hours on the phone for that week and a half or 2 week period, when we were finally in person, it was like, is the chemistry here? Like, can we work together? And then that night, her husband joined us for dinner, and Bob also had to approve. And Bob is Susan's husband, and we love Bob. So
you passed the test. It's like,
I guess I passed the test.
It's like meeting the parents. And going back to One Kings Lane, so much of what your company is about this identity, this brand. There's a very specific look and feel that One Kings Lane has. Who is the One Kings Lane shopper? What do you think of when you're building this company?
And I love that question because when we think about the One Kings Lane shopper, it's a she, by and large. 95% of our shoppers are women, and we're thinking about their need states. We're thinking about what are they going to need in terms of their home needs, in terms of their entertaining needs. How can we help improve their life?
Okay. And when you are thinking about that shopper, obviously when you and Susan start this company, you're filling a need that you personally had seen for yourself. How do you evolve a business from when you're starting it off with yourself in mind as the consumer and knowing what that person needs because that person is you, and then when you have to expand it to a wider market?
Well, something that we did, just because, to your point about this sort of being like a new category and a new vertical that was really being explored in terms of focusing only on home and entertaining, was the concept that we wanted to build a brand. One Kings Lane is a brand. And so that took a lot of effort and energy, in addition to thinking about, okay, how are we going to run the business? How are we going to think about operations? How are we going to think about marketing? But again, the key point that we really focused on in the very beginning was, what is this brand? And how can this brand, One Kings Lane, become the ultimate sort of solution and guide to our shopper? How can we really enable our shopper to know that One Kings Lane, because of this brand, this overall entity, is really offering me the best product, but also B, the best price? So that was really important to us as we were building our business.
And throughout the years since 2008, and you launched in 2009, you haven't expanded One Kings Lane to other verticals besides home decor. You've kept this very, very strong focus on home decor. And I'd imagine at some time there has been pressure from people who maybe you talk to as investors or in the business who said, look, all these other companies are expanding out and doing nail polish and clothes and everything under the sun. You know, why don't you guys do that too?
Well, when you think about the category, it's actually a really, really big category, right? And there's actually tons of micro verticals within the vertical of home. So there's, you know, tons of micro verticals within items, for example, that go inside your home. And then you also think about the categories that go outside your home. And then you also layer in entertaining. So it's actually a massive, massive market. And it's really taken extreme focus and being really sort of laser focused around the ideal and really knowing where we want to be. And it's hard because you're right. It's like people would come and say, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? And why aren't you guys doing this? And well, you know what? We're all about the home.
Do you ever see that expanding out to other places, or is One Kings Lane a home company forever?
We're really happy to be in the home and lifestyle space.
Okay, makes sense. Yeah. And when you talk about, you know, flash sales, that's almost become a dirty word in the past few years, and because other companies have kind of had big expansions and big contractions. Of course, I'm thinking of Fab. You know, Gilt has unfortunately had to lay off some people. You know, worldwide, these companies have gotten really big and contracted, but One Kings Lane has kind of quietly stayed growing. What has made you guys different, you think, from other companies that made names as flash sales companies?
Well, I don't think flash sales is a dirty word. A company that I greatly admire is Zulily, and they're firmly saying to the world, we are a flash sales site and business, and we're focusing on children's. So for me, personally, I don't think it's a nasty word, but you know, the One Kings Lane business, for example, has definitely evolved past flash sales. You know, our inventory is no longer end-of-life inventory. So, but you know, that obviously has changed for us. But you know, I just think it's business models continue to evolve, and I can't speak for other businesses why they're contracting, or so. I can only speak for One Kings Lane.
Right, and you have grown so much. You know, obviously I mentioned the funding, but really just as a business, you have, is it 10 million users now?
Yes.
10 million users. You have 500 employees. When I think, you know, of a lot of people who have businesses here, to think about getting to 500 employees is so large. Was there a point as you were growing the company that you felt like it was even more stressful than it is now? Sometimes you hear about companies getting to a point where they had to get past a growing pain. Was it 50 employees or 100 employees? What was the point where at your growth you felt the biggest growing pain?
A really big growing pain for us was in probably 2010, when we just knew from a product and tech perspective there were so many things that we wanted to do. And because of that, we put the resources behind actually building our own platform, and that launched in early 2011. So that was like a massive sort of growing point and challenge. But I think to your point, I think at every stage, you're just always constantly hitting new challenges, right? And it's all about like focusing in on the challenge and trying to figure out what the best solution is for your business.
And can you explain?
And your customers, right? Because everything we do is always led by our shoppers.
And what is that building your own platform? Do you mean when you started to sell your own branded products, or what does that mean in 2010?
Building our own infrastructure, our own tech infrastructure.
Okay.
Yeah, and putting the resources behind that. When we launched our business in 2009, we had outsourced the business to a great company who was fantastic in helping us grow and launch. And then, you know, like I said before, back in probably late 2010, we realized there was a lot of things that we wanted to do, and it was for the best interest of the company to actually build our own platform.
And what did that look like did you have to hire a lot more engineers? What was the biggest decision there that you had to make when you said, okay, we're gonna invest in this? That's a huge thing, especially to move from one platform to another platform, let alone build your own platform and then move it to there.
Yeah, that means investing in engineers and product folks.
Right.
For sure.
And when you think about hiring those people, I'm sure everybody would like to hire engineers. How did you do that? Especially at that time, in 2010, things are super hot just like they are now. It's a competitive landscape if you're hiring engineers. How did you do that?
It's a really good question. As we know, it's really hard to find engineers, and it's really about being true to who you are and also building just a great culture and making sure that people feel like they're going to be able to join and really make a difference.
What's the company vibe internally at One Kings Lane like? What kind of family do you try to build?
Well, it's interesting because we have 3 offices, and it's really great because there's New York, San Francisco, and Los Angeles, and they're all a little tiny different because of obviously their respective cities, but there's one culture. It's one team, and that's really important to us, and that always has been super important to us in terms of building that familial aspect across 3 cities. And it's also important to know, from our earliest of days, we were always in at least 3 offices. Right. So it's been part of our DNA.
You've been flying back and forth
We've all been flying back and forth. We've been working remotely, and it's making the best of what we have, but also really enjoying, the culture that we have in each city. And it's really fun for everyone for the folks who get to travel and be in different cities. It's great fun. And, we've also had to, clearly invest in telecom to make sure that meetings can happen and people can see each other's faces and that there's really strong communication. So.
And I want to switch gears a little bit here too, because we've talked about you and we've talked about Susan, but we haven't talked about your CEO.
Doug.
And in, I guess it was 2010, you made the decision to bring on an outside CEO. Why did you make that decision, and how did you decide on Doug? What did you look for in a CEO?
So the business was growing so incredibly rapidly in 2009 that we were actually very excited to bring someone on who had scaled a business in a massive way. And so what did we look for? So we looked for someone who could be a great third partner and who could be a fantastic leader. And that was really important for us.
And so many people now think that a founder can be a good CEO. Was there any difficulty in giving up the reins there from you and Susan, or how do you manage that sort of trifecta between the 2 founders and the CEO? Do you have any tips?
No, it wasn't. I've heard that obviously, and that wasn't a challenge for us. It was really because we were so committed to wanting the best for the business that we wanted someone who had that experience of scaling at a really fast pace, and Doug had that, for example. So in terms of tips, I think it's really important to sort of just always be who you are, and the thing that you never want to have happen is to have your new CEO join you, and then there'd be like, oh wait, you were a different person in the interview process. Like, I don't recognize you. So I think it's really important to just be yourself and to sort of, be comfortable with sharing, insecurities or fears or any doubts or questions you might have, because you're going to be married to each other. You are all married to each other, and you all have a big responsibility.
And really quickly, too, we only have a few minutes left. I want to talk about Hunter's Alley, which is the new brand that you've just launched. I guess last year it was a soft launch, and then now there's a really big focus. One Kings Lane has this other entity now. It's your first big launch outside of the One Kings Lane brand. What is Hunter's Alley, and why is that an important part of the business?
So Hunter's Alley was our answer to a question that kept coming up. And the question was from our shoppers. And the question was, hey, can you please help me sell my things? And we so desperately wanted to help our shoppers, but we didn't have a place for that type of inventory on One Kings Lane. And so it made sense to create a new business. And as you know, when you think about building a new brand, building a new destination, and all the ancillary pieces that go around that, it's a lot of work, right? And also thinking about, does there have to be a new platform, and how do you think about payments, and how do you think about the car? And so it took us some time. But when we decided to do it, it was like, we're doing this. And this is going to be a brand that's going to be right for resale.
And so this is a marketplace in itself, but so it's almost like starting another startup here, because it in itself could be a startup on its own right, but it's part of the One Kings Lane community.
Yeah, I guess so. It just seems so intrinsically part of what we're doing that I guess it could be another business, but it's who we are, and it was really important to us to go after this market because we just wanted to we always want to listen to our customers, and you know, from such an early point, we kept receiving these questions. Can you please help me sell my stuff? And so we wanted to be able to step in and really provide that service.
Sounds good. And one other thing, you keep referring to your relationships with your co-founder and your CEO as marriages here, because they are like marriages, but of course you have a real marriage with Mark Pincus, the co-founder of Zynga. How does that work in a household? I think some people here have started businesses, they feel like there's really only room in the house for one founder. That takes up so much time and energy and stress. How do you and Mark kind of balance being in a household and having these two big businesses?
Well, there's so many other things going on. We have children, so there's so many other things going on.
A little more important in the grand scheme of things.
So, and it's just, I don't know, it's never been a problem. It's never been a challenge for us, and I just try to be the best partner that I can. But it's an interesting question, but fortunately it's never been a challenge. It's never been a struggle. So.
That's good.
But it's fun to hear about other businesses. But you know, at the end of the day, it's like there's tons of things that we share in common, and we have so many passions that, you know, it's fun to hear about business, but there's also tons of other things that we like to talk about. So. And
the one thing I've read about you is that you definitely make sure to put the BlackBerry or the iPhone down at a certain time. You make family time for putting down the phone. Is that still something you try to hold on to?
Well, I try to. I think that I was, like everyone else, just like the first person to always respond to an email, and I think it's important to be present. And that was something that I've had to work on, which is being present in front of my family, being present in front of my friends. So it's been a good lesson.
And last question here, I think we're just about out of time. They're telling me to wrap up. But I know, right? It's crazy. But One Kings Lane has proven that you can make a huge hundreds of millions of dollars, close to $1 billion business here, just focused on one vertical. Are there other untapped markets that you personally see out there that could benefit from getting this laser focus like One Kings Lane has had on home decor? What's another potential $1 billion business out here?
Well, I just think there's always room for advancement and room for innovation. And so, for example, if we were to take a step back here and think about the women's category, for example, there's so many sort of segmentations within women. So you're talking about, you know, casual, dressy, petite, undergarments. I mean, when you think about sort of some of these undergarment businesses that are now billion-dollar businesses, Spanx, that's an amazing concept, right? She created that business, and out of nowhere, it's like revolutionizing how women are thinking about their undergarments, for example. But what I think is so fascinating is all these new e-commerce businesses like Warby Parker, they're rethinking the eyeglass business, Zulily's rethinking kids. There's tons of opportunity in commerce, and that's what we're really excited about, is just, you know, watching the landscape and seeing all this great success in e-commerce.
Well, Alison, Pincus, thank you for joining us on stage here.
Thank you.
That's all we have.
If you don't mind, we take a couple of questions?
Sure.
Yeah?
I just want to say this was so much fun. I'm so sad that it was only, 20 minutes?
I know, they were like, wrap it up, but we have questions. That's good.
When you first got into this, did you have any experience with development, or did you bring in an outside CTO to help you?
No, we did not. I mean, we did not bring an outside CTO to help us think through the pros and cons of the platform. But what was really important to us was moving super quickly in our business and getting out to market. So when we shook hands at the end of October, and then our goal was to hit market February. We actually hit market in March. And when you think about an e-commerce business, and when you think about sort of the fact that we were trying to bring together all these vendors, we had to really be focused on how can we sort of, with our own resources, because we hadn't raised money, how can we think about a website and shipping and customer service? And that's why we found this great partner who was able to sort of manage all of those responsibilities or sort of key areas of focus for the company. And they had been great, and we had been referred to them by other folks that we had known in the e-commerce space. So.
Thank you.
We'll take one more question.
I'm happy to take as many questions.
How have your kind of supply chain challenges changed over the years? Because so early on, there was a lot of excess inventory when times were tough, and then, as you said, you kind of outsourced a lot of those logistics initially. But what's your biggest kind of challenge in terms of supply chain today?
Oh my God. Well, I think to your point, like there's been so many challenges, like in every single life cycle and every single life stage. So I remember, just to even address sort of like the early stage, it was like, how do we think about packaging up and moving breakables? Before we launched the business, we hadn't really sat down and properly thought about, like, how do we make sure that this stuff is going to be safe? And when we launched our business, vendors were drop shipping, but also some of the product and inventory was coming to our warehouse. And there was like so many questions and things that like we just hadn't even addressed before we launched the business, for example. And to your point today, and another big thing in the beginning part of our business was, how do you think about sort of if a customer was on the site and they picked product from various merchants, how do we think about like properly organizing ourselves around that, right? Like that was a whole logistical challenge. And today, it's really all about managing the throughput and managing the thousands of vendors and really making sure that they're delivering, whether they're drop shipping or whether they're getting their product to our warehouse. So there's a lot to think about. And Jim, who runs operations for One Kings Lane, is a superstar. And he joined us in 2010. Yeah, thank you. I'm happy to keep answering questions.
Hi, I'm Anna Wolkowska from Homeplex. I would like to ask you if you see potential in 3D technology and visualizations for promoting products you're selling.
I'm sure there's great opportunities, and thank you. I know you've tweeted to me about Homeplex. I'm sure there's great opportunities for that. In our business right now, it's not currently the most pressing need for One Kings Lane, but I'm sure I know there are tons of really interesting concepts that people are exploring around 3D and how do you share ideas and concepts with people in 3D. So there's some interesting stuff.
Alison, going back to the very early days, how were you able to convince the vendors and to have enough vendors so that you could have enough merchandise to bring in the consumers? The very early days, when you were a non-entity.
Yeah, so when we launched the business, it was really important to us, and our goal was to have we wanted to make sure that we had a month's worth of events planned out, and we wanted to basically create a calendar whereby we would have a new brand come on every single day. And that was our goal, was to have, again, enough vendors so that when we launched, we would have 30 days, and then we could begin to working on month 2, month 3, and month 4. And it's never easy. It was so tough, but it was also really, we sort of took those challenges and like just went with them, because it was like, here we are, a brand new company, calling vendor A, calling vendor B, calling vendor C, and like half the time they would say, I don't know who you are, call us in a year, right? But it was like, it put us on our toes, and it made us work that much harder to try to land those accounts. And something I didn't really talk about, because I didn't really have a chance to, was we always sort of had this goal, and we knew where we wanted to be, but it was really important for us to sort of launch our business with certain categories, because we either felt confident that we could get to the vendors, or we felt confident that they would be willing to work with us. And it was always like, it was helpful to sort of be very oriented around goals and milestones and never taking our eyes off like the big concept, but really focusing on, to your point, the short term, because we had to work. Susie and I had to land those brands. It was critical. And then once we factored in, we wanted PR early on because we thought that it'd be really important to get early momentum. And so to sustain something, it was critical that we, back that up with great brands and a great experience for the shoppers. And early on, we hit some really hard times. Like I remember, I think it was like the first week, there were vendors who were like, I'm sorry, I told you I had 20 units for this SKU, but we don't. And that was like a big challenge. Like, oh no, how do we deal with the fact that like we've oversold something? So it was really important to start thinking about what is our customer service going to be? How are we going to like really, really service these shoppers?
All right, I want everyone back on their feet, and a big thank you to Colleen and Alison.
Great. I guess I'll head off.
Thank you. All right, guys, probably want to hang around here. We've got Jessica Livingston from Y-Combinator coming up next at 3, so I think it's 10 minutes from now or something like that. So, yep.
All right, guys, this is the moment we've been waiting for. This is the last session. Hi, my name is Brian Park. I am the chapter director of DC. How many folks we have here from DC? Okay, nobody. Great. No love. So we have a very, very special guest here in our closing session. She is the co-founder of Y-Combinator. How many of you have not heard of Y-Combinator? Okay, you guys, you need to leave. All right, so Y-Combinator is one of the top accelerators in the world. They've invested over 650 companies, including Airbnb, Dropbox, Reddit, you name it, it's everything. So she's going to be interviewed by our infamous leader, Derek Andersen. And if you don't know who Derek is, you need to leave too. So, you guys all ready? All right, let's give a huge Startup Grind cheer for Jessica Livingston and Derek Andersen.
Well, welcome.
Thanks. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks for coming. How was your drive?
Easy, just from Palo Alto. Very easy.
You're close. Where do we have people from? Don't shout out all at once, but just give Jessica a sense of where you're from. That didn't work. Okay, we're not going to do that. Forget it.
All over.
You're from everywhere. Absolutely didn't work.
Well, I'm feeling very happy to be here because this is where we host our demo day. And so I was telling Derek, I know this whole building like the back of my hand, but I'm usually not up on stage, so this is very fun.
Well, let's talk. You're going to be back here in a month with your conference for women. Talk to us a little bit about where did that come from? Why are you doing it? What are you doing with it? Tell us about it.
The Female Founders Conference. This is the first conference we've ever done to inspire women to start startups. And the idea came, I've kind of wanted to do something just for women for years, but we're just always so busy it never seemed to happen. And then last December, Paul Graham, my husband and co-founder, emailed me and said, you know, we should do an event where we showcase a lot of the female YC founders because there are a lot now that are doing really well. They'd be great. And I said, absolutely, let's do it. And it's set for March 1st. And we were going to do it at our office, but we got so many applications that we moved it to the Computer History Museum right in here.
Great.
I'm very excited.
And so you've got founder of HomeJoy, you've got Diane Green, you've got Julia Hartz from Eventbrite. So you've got. Have you hit a point where you've got, who do you point to as the kind of tentpole female entrepreneurs that have come through the YC program that have, that are breaking through?
There are a lot. I definitely would say Adora Chung of HomeJoy. She's just, I'm sort of obsessed with her lately and her story of HomeJoy, which I'm happy to tell you about later. But she's just doing so well. They're growing so fast. And her story, she just came to Y-Combinator as one of our dinner speakers. And usually YC alumni don't get to come as dinner speakers until they're pretty eminent. Like the Airbnb guys come, Dropbox, Weebly. And she came for the first time, and I actually heard her story. I knew a lot of what was going on, but clearly I did not know the whole story. And I was like on the ground in shock. I could not believe how amazing the story was, and it was so inspiring. So I can't wait for her to speak at this event.
You put on Startup School, which I have said this many times is the best founder event that you can attend if you can attend it. Or watch. It's always online. You always do a live stream. What has Y-Combinator seen in the value of these types of events that you do? What do you all get out of it? What do entrepreneurs get out of it? Why should entrepreneurs spend time going to things like this or listening to things like this?
Well, our events specifically, they've always been like this from the very first time we did Startup School in 2005 at Harvard. They're very simple and very straightforward. There's not a lot going on at them except for kind of short 25-minute talks that are just all about advice and listening to other people's stories. Because I think you learn the most from hearing what happened to people who have done startups and what went wrong and what mistakes did they make. And we don't have a lot of fluff. I mean, not that a lot of things have fluff, but it's just all day, all these talks, and you get to meet a lot of interesting people and hear really good advice.
Our hashtag is Startup Grind, and Jessica's Twitter handle is Founders at Work. I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about the very early days of Y-Combinator. You've used this line before that people didn't care about what we were doing, and I wonder if you could just tell us about when that was and what the context of that is.
Well, when we first got started, it was early in 2005, and it was sort of by accident, as so many startups do. Paul and I were talking a lot about how we could help startup founders. He wanted to be an angel investor, but didn't want a lot of the stuff that goes along with being an investor, like taking meetings and reviewing documents and stuff. So we sort of came up with this idea for Y-Combinator that we would provide small amounts of funding, because we didn't think it took that much to get a founder into first gear. We'd help them incorporate, make it really easy for them. Paul and Robert and Trevor would work on helping them with their idea. They were mostly super technical stuff back then. And we just said, well, gosh, none of us know anything about investing, angel investing. We better learn. Let's just do a little program in the summer where we can fund a bunch of startups, see what we learn, and then we'll go from there and do things asynchronously like everyone does. So Paul was pretty well-known essayist back then, especially in the programming community. So he built our website. We described what we were going to do, have this summer program where you'd come and we'd help you and we'd get you incorporated and you could hear successful speakers, and we'd give you $12,000 in funding. I think that's what it was back then. We launched the website, and lo and behold, we got a bunch of applications. So suddenly it became kind of real. We interviewed groups over a weekend and chose 8 to get started.
Do you remember how many you had? How many applied?
I think it was
like 9
about,
or?
No, it was around 200.
Oh,
I
wow.
think Paul's here somewhere to confirm. 200?
400.
500.
400.
400 applications. Wow, that's higher than I even thought. What we learned that summer was like, wow, investing in this batch over this 3-month period is a really good format. The founders all became friends. Even though they were working in their own apartments, by themselves, they came together for dinners and to meet, and they all helped one another. They could all go hear the speakers at the same time. We could have this demo day thing, which, by the way, I think we had 15 to 20 investors in Cambridge. Like, some of them were legit, some of them were just rich people we knew that we said, can you please come? We weren't
all from the Boston area?
All from the Boston area. But we knew we were onto something. And
how did you know that? What was the insight?
Maybe we lucked out and got really good founders, but the startups were doing interesting things. I mean, we had Reddit in that batch. Yeah. We had Keynote, which was an online calendar that Google actually crushed when they came out with their calendar. But the founders were from Justin TV, Justin and Emmett. We had Sam Altman of Looped. So we got good people, and they were able to get some funding. So we said, gosh, we need to do this out in Silicon Valley. We don't want someone else to be the Y-Combinator of Silicon Valley.
Could you tell really early on that you were having, like, the impact that you were having on these people? It wasn't just that you had kind of pulled them together, and, but that you all, your product advice and your logistics or incorporation of all these pieces, was it very evident that, hey, these guys aren't going to be able to get this, these men and women aren't going to be able to get this advice anywhere else? And,
oh, yeah. Like, even incorporating. Like, I specifically handled that, and we had to argue with our lawyers to design template forms. They were like, no, you have to send people to lawyers to get incorporated. And we said, no, you don't. Make us some templates, and I know you just fill these things in, and even I could tell. And so we forced our lawyers to do this.
As 4 lawyers walk out
and
of the
just
room.
that, though. Sorry, lawyers, I don't mean to
it's
offend
okay.
you.
We don't mind offending.
But even just that simple thing, helping them incorporate, you'd have to spend $15,000.
One thing I find interesting about you is that you are the you have these amazing technical founders, and you are the amazing business founder. And I don't know if that sounds very negative, but I've heard it said that if you had not been there, Y-Combinator would have never been incorporated. It would have never actually been a company.
That is true, actually. I do feel confident saying it would not have been incorporated, not because my co-founders were unable to do it, but they just would not have been organized enough to do that. I'm serious. I mean, that's what a startup is, though. Different people are doing different things and getting everything done. I'm not technical. I could no more choose who was a good programmer back then. You know, I couldn't do that, but I could incorporate the company and set everything up.
Yeah, but you played your role as a member of the team, and right? And
yeah. But you had asked me about, was it hard, like, because we thought no one cared. And I don't think I gave you the spiel about how we got started, but I don't think I answered. It wasn't that hard because some people cared. You know, and that's an important thing to remember. Paul Buchheit,
your co-founders, or you mean?
No, some people.
Other people besides just you cared.
The 8 people we funded cared.
Okay,
you know, and some of the investors who funded them cared, and then it was slowly growing. And Paul Buchheit, who's one of the YC partners, he invented Gmail. He gives this great advice, which is it's so much better to make a few people love you than a lot of people just like you. And that is just so true with whatever you're doing. And that's what it was for us. Like, a few people loved us, and we just sort of grew from there. So even though reporters didn't love us, they wouldn't return my phone calls and could care less that we were doing this new way of funding. We just moved on. We didn't need them.
Can you tell the story about when you tried to reach out to Ron Conway? Who people know, for those that don't know, Ron Conway is probably the most prolific angel investor in the Valley. Was in Google, was in Facebook, was in basically every deal. And so he would have been maybe the best guy to get in the room for your demo day. And what was his reaction?
Oh, gosh. He tried to brush me off like 3 different times. And I'm just a bad salesperson, I think, because I had no luck with the press or Ron at first. But we got an introduction to Ron. And because what we were doing was so new, people didn't understand. You couldn't say, oh, we're an accelerator. That name didn't even exist. So it was hard for anyone to clearly understand what we were doing. So I tried to explain, do you want to come to demo day? You'll see 10 companies present over the course of a couple hours. We'd love for you to invest in them. And he responded, what? You want me to invest in you? And I was like, no, in these startups that are presenting. And he just kept coming back, trying to brush me off. He's like, we'll circle back. I don't know if I can come. And then I think what happened, so I gave up. And I think Ron then started hearing about us from a couple different people.
That he respected.
And he said, maybe I should go to demo day and just check this out. And so he came, and I feel like he might agree that the moment he came, he realized, oh, now I get it.
He got it.
I get it now.
In Boston, or was it here?
It was out here. It was the winter, the first winter we were out here, which was in winter 2006. And we only had 9 startups. But there were some good ones in that batch. Wufu was in that batch. I forget. It's hard to remember.
So this kind of trend of startups, whether that was just kind of this kind of economic global trend, or maybe the social network movie kind of picked up before that, what are you seeing in terms of the pitches that you're getting, the applications that you're getting? Has the volume increased dramatically over the last few years? Is it kind of steadily increased? What's happened? What are you seeing?
I think it's steadily increased. It's always sort of steadily increased. There was definitely a spike when the movie The Social Network came out. Go figure. And when that was sort of around the same time Facebook went public, right? Roughly. Like, when those 2 things happened, I think a lot of people got interested in starting startups. It just became sort of more mainstream. When we started in 2005, it was not a mainstream thing to do. You either kind of went to grad school or got a job. There were, of course, people starting startups, but it was not like what everyone did.
Is the quality of these companies who are getting higher volume, is the quality the same? Is it better? Is it worse?
I mean, we've always gotten some good applicants. I think the quality is definitely not worse. There are definitely people applying. I guess the surprising thing to me is there are people applying to Y-Combinator that are much farther along than they used to be. When we first got started, often it was just an idea. People hadn't even built a prototype or anything. And now it's people like doing a Series A at the same time they're coming to YC, which is fine with us. You know, we'll take you at whatever stage. But that's sort of a main difference.
Well, so that leads to my next question of, well, if you're getting so many more startups and so many more applications of that same quality, you know, do you scale up? You started with allowing more startups into your program. Is that something that you know, that as you look out, could you double in size? Could you triple in size, you know, over the next few years? Is that, or do you just say, hey, these are all great, you know, go somewhere else?
We never want to do that. Come on, Derek.
I agree. So there's like 10 people in the room like,
you know, that is a very good question. I don't know if I have the right answer for you right now. I do believe there are going to be a lot more people starting startups, and it's just going to increase. I think this is like a major shift in the economy. And Y-Combinator needs to figure out how to scale to accommodate more startups. Because remember, at our stage, it is so hard to pick the winners. There's no way when we were looking at Drew Houston and Arash's application that we said, Dropbox is going to be the next big thing. I mean, I think I've said that about 100 of the startups we funded, and it doesn't happen. It's so hard to judge. Even after they go through Y-Combinator, it's still hard for us to predict who will be the next Airbnb and Dropbox. And so we need to fund a lot of startups. We need to give a lot of them a shot because you just don't know who's going to be the big one. So we need to figure out how to scale. We probably will fund more startups.
But I mean, Drew, he had like a perfect SAT or something. I mean, you know, you knew he was going to do something special right enough that you said, hey, you need to go get a co-founder and come back.
But we liked him.
You liked him.
There are a lot of smart people that apply to YC. I mean, they're like Rhodes Scholars and just tons of.
But they don't all get in. Rhodes Scholar, check, you're in. Doesn't happen.
No. Okay. We don't have that. We're
Cross
not like
that
that.
off of my.
We're more about.
to do next.
No, there's a lot of smart people that do startups that don't succeed. So it's not like we can say, oh, they went to MIT, let's fund them. But Drew did go to MIT.
He did go to MIT.
Yes, it's not a bad predictor. I'm not saying that, but it's not a guarantee. And so it's very hard to predict who the best startups are going to be.
In your last batch, this current batch, which you're right in the middle of, you had founders from 23 different countries. I wonder if you could just tell us, from the data you're seeing, where does this influx of international entrepreneurs coming from? Is this from the AdWords campaigns you're doing in Turkey? Or is this from
we don't advertise. We don't advertise.
Retargeter in Bulgaria? I don't know. Or what is it? Where is this coming from?
I wish I had a good answer.
No idea.
It is going to be the most boring answer. I'm so sorry. But I think it's just because startups are becoming more mainstream. More people are doing them. The thing that has surprised me about the international applicants that we've been getting and the international founders in this particular batch, they're not just all from England and Canada, which in the past we've always funded people from those countries. They're from like Bulgaria and Slovenia and Sudan and Egypt.
You can cheer if you're from these countries.
It's just remarkable. It's so exciting. But I don't know. I don't have like a good explanation other than more people are doing startups.
PG's huge in Bulgaria. Maybe that's
I mean, I think, yeah.
Is their approach different? Are they solving different problems? Are they solving problems that American companies are in their countries? What are these people doing?
Not really. I mean, most of them are working on problems that a U.S. team could be focused on. I always forget who has launched yet, so I don't want to specifically call things out. But
I mean, they probably launched, so you could say it, but no one's going to talk about it, I don't think.
There's some reporters in here, but a lot of them, most of them are working on problems that are global problems.
Okay. And so when you bring an international entrepreneur into the program, they're under the same rules of, hey, they can go home and solve that problem at home, go work at home. Or if they can get a visa or they want to get a visa and try and stay here, they can do that as well.
They're in a bad situation because the way it works with YC, we say come to Silicon Valley for 3 months And then you do what you want to with your business. Some people go back where they are living. Some people choose to stay. It's fine with us. But the international founders are forced to go home. And then they're forced to go through this lengthy and time-consuming and expensive process of obtaining a visa to allow them to come back to the United States. And it's just broken and horrible. And so these founders, you know, in addition to struggling with building their product and getting more users and fundraising, they also have to like do all this immigration crap, you know, that they're forced to do. And it is so distracting, and it can kill a company. And so I feel always so badly for the founders that have to go back to some foreign country, you know, and can't stay here if they want to.
Is that something is that a problem that you think that we as entrepreneurs here in the United States with those things, is that something we should be actively trying to help or work on? Is that something that, you know, should we, you know, I mean, I'm trying to solve 10 other problems already. Should I just focus on the problems that my startup's trying to solve?
It's a big problem, and if you're doing a startup, maybe you're a U.S. resident, but people you want to hire may not be. And the more people we can allow to come over and work at our companies and start companies, I think the better. I think it's a good, I mean, I know it's hard to divide your time. I certainly struggle with it, but I think it's a good thing to help to try to solve. I mean, a lot of it relies on the government, of course.
One of the things you're really known for is being able to evaluate the people that come in, as well as kind of the relationship between the founders. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about what are some of the things that you see, what are the red flags that you see between co-founders? What are some of the things that you look at right at the very earliest stages of 1 to 3, you know, people?
Yeah, so because I'm not technical, when we're interviewing people, I'm usually trying to judge them on other things. And one of the things I try to pay attention to in the meager 10 minutes that we have to make these decisions.
It literally is 10 minutes.
It is 10 minutes
and they
long.
are in, and then they are in the parking lot.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, they can hang out at YC for the day if they want to talk to alumni.
They get a drink, and then they need to leave.
They can hang out and talk. We have alumni come, and they can hang out and talk and ask questions, but there's no more talking to us in the room. And by the way, we make the decision at that moment.
With them in the room?
Not them in the room, but we make the decision because we're interviewing 20 in a day. We have
you could forget. You
forget.
Oh, yeah, we love that one. It's like, no, we got the wrong.
Yeah, it gets very confusing, so we decide. So it's very quick.
Yeah.
So it's, you know, not a long period of time, but I'm looking at, do the founders get along? I mean, believe it or not, we've seen some founders who, like, fight, you know.
In front of you?
Yes, we've seen everything. But, so do the founders get along? Do they, you know, do they have a good vibe between them?
Yeah.
You know, it would be bad if
they have
and I
rapport.
was founders and I said, stop, I'm going to answer that. You know, stop, you know, kind of thing. We see, like, you wouldn't believe what we see. So,
red flag.
Do they get along? Do they understand their domain? You know, that's a very exciting thing. Obviously, you know, I rely on, like, Robert if it's like some security company, but if it's, you know, someone doing an idea that's consumer based, I try to see if, like, they've really thought deeply about this and can they answer questions. Are they defensive? You know, when we're talking to them, we're like asking them questions about their business, and it's okay to say, like, I don't know the answer to that, but I've thought about it and here's where I'm headed. Sometimes people will get, you know, upset or something if you ask them a question. I don't know. So I'm just looking at founder dynamics because the point is we want to work with people who we have enjoyable, like valuable conversations with, and it's not like they get angry if we say, why are you doing that instead of this? You know? Yeah,
if they get angry in the only 10 minutes you spend with them, that's probably
that's
a bad
really bad sign. I mean, I don't want to give it away. It's not like you shouldn't get angry with us if that's your nature. But, you know, I don't like working with people like that, you know. So I'm just looking at little things like that.
Yeah. What about the equity split between the founders? This is something on your application. How much does each person own in the company? You know, who are these people? Tell us about some of the things you've seen with that at the very early stage of companies.
You're giving away all my secrets, Derek. My secret interview tricks. But actually, that is usually a bad sign. especially if it's something like one founder has 90% and the other founder has 10%. And you could argue, well, it was my idea. I've been working on this for a year and I've just brought this person on. But what happens is time goes by and all of a sudden the founder with 10% becomes bitter. I've seen this. I can't even tell you how many times I've seen this. And I warn people against this. I say, please rethink the equity distribution when you're setting up the incorporation. And it's just not good. You think oh, I've been working on this for 2 months. I deserve more stock. 2 months, that's the tip of the iceberg if your company's successful. And you want that person who's working just as hard as you do to feel like they're going to get compensated. So it's a bad sign. But I'm not saying it doesn't work. I'm sure there are companies that it's worked at, but it's usually bad. Because I've seen a lot of founder breakups. I'm sort of an expert in founder breakups.
Yeah, tell us other things that you've seen that either are early bad indicators, or if this happens, start getting ready to walk away because it's not going to work. Are there just kind of more?
Well, we've seen a lot of people join as co-founders to apply to YC, and that's usually not a great sign. I mean, it has worked. Drew Houston got a co-founder.
I'm laughing because I have tried that exact trick one time, so it's bad.
You applied to YC?
Yeah, several years ago. It's not subject at all. But I'm
not saying it doesn't work. I'm not saying it doesn't work. It's just often a bad sign.
Yeah, but two people who are maybe talented or have different skills saying, hey, let's just get together and maybe we can get in and make something work, but not being a company just to be a company.
Yeah, and the two people maybe haven't known each other that long, and maybe they have different work styles and values, and I'm not saying it's an utter disaster. It can work out, but believe me, I get super excited when I see 2 college roommates apply, and they've known each other for 10 years, or 2 people who've worked together for 5 years, because they know each other, and you know your personalities, and you know that if there is a conflict, which of course there will be, they're going to come out better than 2 people who don't have that trust.
Yeah. What's just by a raise of hands, how many people in this room have ever applied to Y-Combinator? Raise your hand. That's actually a lot less than I would have thought.
Applications are going to be open this month.
Well, there we go.
Yeah.
Perfect timing. Talk to us a little bit about, you just had this announcement recently about an investment policy that's changed with the partners investing in startups. Could you talk to us a little bit about what this is and why you're doing it?
Yeah, it's a new policy that basically says Y-Combinator partners cannot invest on their own in one of the YC-funded startups until that startup has raised at least $500,000 or it's 3 weeks after demo day, at which time, if the investors have all gotten a chance to look and they've passed, we can jump in if we want to. And the reason we did this is to help the startup. We think it's best for the startups because what was happening in the past, traditionally, occasionally Paul Graham or sometimes Paul Buchheit would make an angel investment early on to help the startup. But it was kind of haphazard. It wasn't super, it was kind of haphazard and disorganized. So it was okay for a few years, but now a lot of our partners, like Gary Tan, has a fund with Alexis, and Harge was involved in that, and a lot of and Jeff Ralston invests as an angel investor, which they did, before even joining YC. But what was happening is that they were investing before demo day, and as the startups went out to raise funding, the big question they were getting from investors was,
who did you put money in?
Have YC partners invested? And for the ones that couldn't say yes, they were seen as losers, and they aren't losers. They're probably great investment opportunities, but it was a big signaling problem. So we just said, we might be hurting some of the startups. Let's just make this the way it is.
How do you all look at these partners that have left and are starting their own funds? Is this like a natural progression of their kind of careers?
They haven't left and started their own fund.
They're still involved as partners.
Yeah, Gary Tan is still a YC partner and has his own fund. Harge Tagar left, but he went off to do his own think he was traveling for a little while.
Right.
And even though he's involved in the fund, it's just part-time. So there's no one who really left to start their own fund.
Okay.
But we think it's great because it's more funding opportunities for startups.
What right now, what are some of the big problems that you're seeing, or are there things that you all are attacking that you're interested in terms of trends with startups? Are there things that you're looking at, or that you're saying?
You make us seem so organized, Derek.
You are the organized one.
Meticulous about things. No, we just fund ideas that we think are interesting. I mean, the new thing that we're doing in this batch is giving funding to nonprofits. We had done that once a year ago with WOTC. We tried to run, WOTC is a nonprofit that provides crowdsourced medical funding to people, and it worked really well, having that team doing YC, and they were able to raise more funding from a lot of the investors who are philanthropic themselves personally. And so we were a little bit more methodical about it, and we had a nonprofit application, and there are 6 nonprofits in this startup, in this batch, including the Immunity Project, which is trying to create a vaccine, a sort of nasal vaccine for HIV. So, it's exciting to be able to have, nonprofits in the batch as well. But there's no specific problem. It's not like we go after a specific thing that we want to do. We just say who looks like it
looks
could be
interesting,
good.
and these are good people.
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it.
We have a wide variety of startups in this batch, as well as it being kind of more diverse than usual from the perspective of the international companies. There's more women in this batch than we've ever had. There's, I think, the oldest founder we've ever funded, as well as the youngest founder we've ever funded.
How old is that?
I think he's 56, and the youngest is 17. There's a father-son team in this batch. There's twins.
Is he living in a dorm room with 2 other guys?
No. I think they have an apartment. They're not from here, I don't think.
2-bedroom or 3-bedroom?
I don't know the specifics. Maybe, I don't know.
Get the details.
I will ask
later.
them. I will specifically say that I was asked this question.
He's 56. That's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, yeah, let's give him a round of applause. Maybe he's here. Who knows? Hey, there he is. No, I don't know.
The point is, more people are starting startups. This is great.
Yeah. But it just breaks every stereotype, which I love. I think it's great.
Yeah.
So, it's really cool. Okay, let's take a question or two. What do we got? Where's the mic? Brian? Go for it.
My question? No,
yeah.
Okay.
Or right here, Ozan, right here on the second row here.
Maybe Paul might also jump into this. There was a recent book on you, on the Launchpad. I read it in 2 days. It was an amazing storytelling, and also told a lot of the details that how mentors were engaged, how older startups or alumni was engaged. I was wondering how did you build that community of alumni? Because there are some competitors among the new batches that are competing with the old batches, but there's still a community. They're coming together, they're helping each other. How did you manage that community helping each other?
I think that just goes back to our roots. We were always into our community. I wasn't joking when I said if someone seems like a real jerk in interviews, I don't want to fund them.
Yeah.
We've fostered this this feeling of always trying to help one another, because if you help someone, someone's going to help you, and that happens all the time. And they're just a great group of people, and that's just what happens. And if you don't act like that, you become an outcast. If you're people don't tolerate bad behavior within the YC community, and news spreads too fast amongst the YC community. But it's good.
It's also very, it's kind of contained or controlled. I mean, you don't hear, you hear that it's good, it's great, but it's insulated very well. I mean, you guys are kind of keep it very tight, and I wonder if that's just the nature of who the people are in there, or if it's.
I think we just always try to, we're always trying to do things to get the YC community to interact. We have different batches, you know, mixing and mingling. I don't think we do anything specific. I think they're probably just super busy working on their startups, and so I don't know. Maybe I don't know. We don't do anything specific to try to keep.
There's a story that I've heard you tell where one founder's site went down and they didn't know how to fix it, and then another group. Could you tell that story?
Oh, yes. Okay, so that was a few years ago. It was Bump, which was the startup where you bump your phone and you can like transfer everything you want. But it started out with like your name and contact information, and they were in a batch, and I think on the same day they were featured in like an Apple TV commercial. But at the same time, I think they were also like the billionth app downloaded or some milestone that Apple was celebrating.
Rough day.
Apple just went crazy promoting Bump on this like one day, and Bump got so much their servers were melting. They got so many users, you know, trying to download them, and they emailed YC founders, and they're like, "Help! Our servers are completely melting. We're in such trouble. We were just featured featured as the billionth app. Can anyone help?" And literally within 15 minutes, the founder of CloudKick, which is, you know, they're experts in server management. They were acquired by Rackspace, but he's like, "I can help you." He was over at their house, like doing things, and like got them back up and running. And that's the power of the Y-Combinator community.
Well, Fadi, you want to ask? We'll do one more question here real quick. Run up there, Brian.
Hi.
I'm really glad to hear about that you're taking nonprofit companies as well into the batch. I think that's really interesting. My question is, what do you think, how could the pure capitalist, I guess, and everybody else and the nonprofit, what could they learn from each other in this process, being accelerated as a nonprofit company that they're mission-driven versus the ones who are going after market opportunities and building product for profit?
Well, we are hoping that the nonprofits can learn that if you apply some of the same techniques that startup do to like move fast and break things and launch early and listen to your users and iterate a lot, some of those principles can help make the nonprofits a lot better. I mean, I don't think it's a secret that a lot of nonprofits are sort of bureaucratic and antiquated the way they approach things. So we're hoping that if they take more of a startup approach, it'll be beneficial to the world.
And the other way around?
Yeah. And our for-profits, it's so fabulous. Like what we've seen with WotC at least, like 2 of the startups who have office space in San Francisco are sharing their office space with WotC and like doing promotions with them, and like the way that the startups are helping to support WotC is just phenomenal. People donating profits to them and stuff. It's really special.
How many people in here have read Founders at Work? Okay. Well, I just wanted to close on this note that, you know, when was this book published? It's been over
2007.
Yeah, it's been okay. So
yeah,
it's been 7 years. This is still the most for me by far. There's no one even close. There's no book even close. The most impactful real book on what it's like to be an entrepreneur. And I'm like going to start some sort of campaign online to get Jessica to write a sequel.
I would love
and to do it. But I just really encourage you all, if you haven't read this, to go get it. The founder of Mozy, about 3 or 4 years ago, I was talking to him, and he was talking about my startup, and he said the idea at that time, and he said, "Man, you're really screwed." But he said, "You should go read Founders at Work, because that'll help you on the next thing you're going to do." I'm like, "Wait, I'm still doing this." He's like, "No, you're screwed there. But just read that book." And I did, and actually it happened. I had it. I was going on vacation that day, and I had it in my suitcase, and I read it, and it really has. I still read it. I've read it several times. So thank you so much for that. Let's give Jessica a big, huge round of applause.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So much. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll just I'll just say one or two things. And you got a mic, Brian, can I get you just run here for a second? So we're at the end. So that's pretty good. Oh, yeah, all right, nice. It's like, dang it, I can't get drunk tonight. Not me. That was this woman over here. So let's just very quickly, maybe we can have 2 or 3 people just say something that they learned over the last 2 days. This is not going to take long, I promise. We're going to end here very quickly. But if someone want to share something, our camera guy up here, you want to share something? Okay.
Words.
Like which lens to use or something? Don't ever use the third. Okay, go ahead.
It's the question of how do I get better? I forgot who said it, but I just remember it. How do I get better?
How do I get better?
Yeah.
Okay. Reed Hoffman. Thank you. Yeah. Anyone else? Real quick. Yeah. Shout it out. Good. Just shout it out. Never give up. I like that one. Anyone else? Yes. You're not alone. That's true. Yes. Always ask why. Know your customer. Give first. Live free? Oh, just breathe? It's like, live free and die hard. What? What percentage of humanity's entrepreneurs? 1%. Yeah, and David Cohen, or Jim, where's Jim? Are you in the room? He told me today that there's 100 million entrepreneurs in the world, which is interesting. Okay, go ahead. Laser focus. Make friends. Don't be afraid to fail. Okay, that's a great one. Whoa, okay. Wait, what? Be pure? Pure. Yes. Very good. Okay, Ryan, last one. Make it good. Okay. Especially in your case, Ryan, it is true. And that you live in Los Angeles. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Well, thank you for coming. We're so grateful to have you. There's people from all over the world. You have come a long ways, and we appreciate that. We hope you will go home and take something that you learn and get to work. And we hope to see you here next year, not so that we can fill up this room again, but so that we can tell each other that, hey, we're still in the game. We haven't given up. Charles Huang, who was here today earlier, who founded Guitar Hero, has said that smart people figure out how to make it work. And just don't run out of money. Just don't give up. If you just can hang in there long enough that you'll figure it out. And I really believe that. So thank you for coming. And we will we'll see you to Start Grind soon. Thank you. No, don't do it. 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 Yeah, all the Startup Grind people, come on up here. If you're a director for Startup Grind, come on up here real quick.
You guys hear me? You guys can't hear me. Can I get all the directors on stage, please? Yeah, get on up here. Hello? Okay. So we're going to get all the, or maybe stay down there. Maybe, I don't know if it's going to hold 1 million people. So, all right, I don't know. All right, I'm going to get down, so take it out now. So there's a lot of directors from all over the world here, and we thought it'd be the correct thing to do to represent Derek with all of our names signed around the world, and just to represent, just how big of a community this really is. And we appreciate each and every one of you guys who are here today, and it's a really big deal for us. It's a small team, and